Welcome to 30 Minutes of Faith. It's our pleasure this week to have Rabbi David Wechsler Azen with us. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure, John.
We sort of plugged him in here in a hurry, and he helped us with an opening, so thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Tell us where you were born and raised.
I was actually born in New York, but my parents exited the high life of Manhattan, Upper West Side for New Jersey, and commuter train line. So I grew up in Westfield and Scotch Plains, New Jersey.
Graduated from high school there?
I did, Scotch Plains Fanwood High School. Four of us joined the golf team when we were sophomores. We were undefeated, and we were the New Jersey State champions in 1976.
And do you still play?
Every chance I get, which is about 3 times a year.
It's a great game.
It really is.
It's a great game.
So many lessons.
I stopped keeping score quite a few years ago because I'm playing with sons and even grandsons these days. But
Yep.
my goodness, it's a nice time to spend 3 hours and get out and do it.
Best time is the first time in a long time when you definitely can't care about the score.
Now, did you grow up in a religious home?
I did not. I would say that golf was the religion. My mom turned 80 yesterday, by the way. Happy birthday, Mom.
Oh,
and
yes.
Dad will be 85, and they still play, actually. But we, there's certain patterns, right? So the immigrant comes in, and then the child of the immigrant really assimilates, and then the third generation kind of looks back at what was lost from the ethnic background. So I fit that model. They've studied the Japanese immigration patterns and Jewish immigration patterns. So my folks, the goal of many of the immigrants was to fit in to the society, and so that's what we did. And now I somewhere along the line, I think it was my rabbi in 10th grade confirmation class, gave me a sense of the wider world and really about what we call tikkun olam, which is repairing the world. So it's in a shattered state, and our job is to help pull it back together. And that spoke to me. I think social justice and all of that. When I was going to high school, history was facts and figures and memorization.
Sure.
There was no analysis of really what was going on behind that. And so I really appreciated what he was doing. And somehow, when I was in college, it kind of clicked in that I really wanted more of that.
You weren't bar mitzvahed?
Oh no, I was.
Oh.
I was. When I say I was, I went to synagogue. We went to synagogue. We went not regularly. We were there for the high holidays. We went for some of the Friday night Sabbaths, but I did have my bar mitzvah, and I remember you get to do a little speech, right? And so I remember speaking about the Attica prison riots because I had the Tower of Babel as my Torah portion. I remember my grandfather. I didn't know what I was talking about. But it was
But he was
impressive.
proudly nodding.
But it was impressive. But he was proudly nodding.
That's what grandfathers do.
That's right. But I'll tell you, actually, the real initiation came at about midnight when, between midnight and 2 a.m., my dad and my uncles sat around our kitchen table telling jokes, and I got to stay up and listen to some of their jokes.
Cool.
And that was that's when I knew I was a man.
That's a cute story. Yeah. At what point in your life did you really say to yourself, I'm going to do this. I want to be a rabbi?
It was about a 3.5-year process. After my freshman year of college, I had really started to get interested in Judaism. I actually had a roommate who was a Christian evangelical in a suite of guys. And he never approached me to say, why don't you come find out about this? But just his presence made me wonder what I would say. And it made me more interested in understanding my faith and my background. So I started taking classes, and then I went to Washington, D.C. for the summer after freshman year, and I was working in what's called the Religious Action Center for the Reform Movement, the Jewish Reform Movement, and learning about Native American issues and welfare and this and that and the other thing, and studying every Friday with the rabbinic interns. And at the end of the summer, one of them said, why don't you think about being a rabbi? It's like, really? Because up until then, I was going to be a civil rights lawyer like Clarence Darrow in Inherit the Wind. That was my model. And so I started thinking about it. I went back to Princeton, and I actually started liberal services there. They only had conservative services.
Were you resisted?
Resisted?
Did people say, no, we don't really,
No, we had a regular crowd of 20 to 30 students, and I remember one snowy winter evening. There were a couple of moments in there that were, I think, formative for me. One was watching everybody go to the library on a Friday night and thinking, well, I'm not a slave. I have a choice here, right? So I'm choosing to step out of the, oh my gosh, I've got to get good grades, I've got to get good grades, and doing something different, and that felt liberating and free. And the other was the time when, unfortunately and horribly, there was a young woman who took her life, and she happened to be Jewish, and the rabbi, the Hillel rabbi, brought her parents to our services. And the notion that that kind of setting could be comforting, and that students who didn't necessarily know the young woman, but were horribly saddened as well, just to be together meant a lot. So I think that was really important. But it was about a 3.5-year process until I finally said, you know what, I'm going to rabbinical school. And I remember I had a Jewish professor of religion who was a skeptic, as many are. And when I came into this seminar that I was taking with another professor, and he was sitting in, and I said, I'm going to rabbinical school, and he just dropped his newspapers.
Oh, no.
That's right. That's right.
I want to tell you my Princeton story.
Sure.
I used to go into the Picatinny Army Arsenal to do business.
Sure.
And presentations and sessions and briefings were given co-sponsored at or with Princeton. And, they were high-level, big things that we would do in the future. So I go to this session one day with a couple of civilians and a couple of Army officers, and one of them was a 2-star general, and they would feed you a little buffet between things,
Right.
And he says to us, I want to take you to a brothel for lunch. And we're all kind of going, okay. So we get in the car, and I sweated all the way. What was I going to do when I actually
Right.
got to the front door?
Right.
So we get there, and as we pull up, we see that it had been a brothel in the 1700s, and then turned into a bed and breakfast in 1838 or
Right.
something, and the sign said we've been serving food here for 150 years or whatever. And he just laughed and laughed and laughed. He thought that was so funny. He'd gotten us. And he said, not a one of you resisted. I said, I'm taking you lunch to brothel. You all just followed me down the road,
That's hilarious.
It was a funny
As
deal.
soon as you said brothel, I thought, it's a place for broth.
Well, it was.
So there you go.
Anytime the topic of Princeton comes up, that's my Princeton
your
story.
story.
Now, how about your children? Tell us about your children.
I have 5 children. I have a 21-year-old who has been at Princeton, and he was going to be a junior this year, and started hobbling around, and they found that he had a cancerous tumor. So he's been recuperating and getting better, and he's doing really well. He's on the other side of that. So, but I'm getting to spend a lot of quality time with him this year, going back to New York where he's getting treated.
Wonderful.
We've got a 17-year-old who has gotten into his safety schools and is waiting to hear from the other colleges that he'd like to go to. And the oldest one wants to be on the Supreme Court, wants to be a Supreme Court justice. And then Sam wants to be a chemist. He's really interested in chemistry. He almost blew himself up this year. He's very proud of that he survived that. So he's got the mad scientist thing going on.
Typical of a 17-year-old.
Exactly, but he's great. He's fantastic. And then there's a 14-year-old here, another boy, 3 boys. And Max is great, terrific. He's going into the Civitas program at Rio next year. And then finally got 2 girls, almost 12 and almost 10, Eliza and Lily. And in our tradition, and I'm sure in yours too, the sign of wealth is your children.
Absolutely.
It is not your bank account. It is how your children are doing. And
on a cruise not too long ago, we were having breakfast with people that we hadn't met till we walked up to the table. They were from Louisville or somewhere. And we got talking about this particular issue, and they had 3 children, and one was at Harvard, and, da-da-da-da-da.
Yep.
And so then he said to me, do you have grandchildren? And I said, I do. And he said, how many? And I said, 20. And he pushed his chair back and said, you are the richest man I've ever known.
Nice.
It touched my heart.
Oh, very nice.
And I said to Shauna later, as we were out walking or something, we forget about that. We believe it, We believe it with all of our hearts that we have children and grandchildren and we're rich, but nobody had ever said to me, "You're the richest man I know."
My father always says that children are the investment and grandchildren are the dividends.
He's got it. He's got it.
So I'm doing the investment part of my life right now.
Now, speak for a minute or two before we go to some of the things you're working on, but you and Rabbi Nancy are teaching and preaching and loving and learning.
Congregation Beth Shalom in Carmichael, here in California. And she's just an amazing rabbi.
She's a wonderful
so privileged
woman.
to serve with her. She really is.
Talented.
Yes. She really is fantastic. And she's brought the whole issue of foster youth to the congregation. We're doing 2 emancipation showers for kids who are coming out of the system at age 18 and then are just kind of tossed, onto their own devices. And so one male, one female. And that's just amazing. And she's involved with area congregations together and meeting with clergy to really think about policy issues and just everything.
How did you guys come to be?
We actually met in school, and then we were friends for 10 years. And we just celebrated 15 years, and it's just wonderful. It's better every day.
Fine woman.
Yep, I'm very blessed.
Fine woman. I've thought a time or two without a good woman, you'd kind of turn into a slug and
absolutely
off you'd go. Now
well, actually, again, in the Jewish tradition, there is no commandment. I just learned this a couple of years ago when we were in Jerusalem. There's no commandment for women to get married.
Really?
It's the man who has to leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife because she's okay on her own. It's the man's repair work depends on
Brother Ben.
a woman putting you to the task. And believe me, my growth in the last has just been very accelerated because of her.
Now let's talk about some of the things you're doing individually because you're busy and involved. Talk to us about in any order you'd like to go.
Well, the thing that I've been working on for about 5 years that's really dear to my heart is Fresh Producers. And that came about, it's a roundabout way. I guess I turned into a restless creative spirit. So I had created these greeting cards called the Super in the Natural. And they were amazing medical photography and biological information. Like, we have 126 billion miles of DNA when we're born, ridiculous things like that. And I got them placed at the NIH gift shops, and I was thinking, where would I give charity to? Because I can't just do business. You've got to do it for a higher purpose, right? Which is why my mother says I'm such a great businessman. I'm giving it away before I make it. But at any rate, it's led to really good
that'll
things.
Work, yeah.
Exactly. So I was thinking, okay, healthy eating would be a good thing. And this was before everything that's coming out about obesity and lack of access to fresh food. So I've gotten a little ahead of the curve and built an organization. We're now in 4 schools and the Sacramento County Youth Detention Facility, and we're helping with the gardens that are there. We're actually putting in garden and greenhouse at the detention facility this coming week.
Great.
Going to be training those students, those youth who are there, and all studies show that when you get kids who are at risk into a garden, it's calming and it's centering, and they learn science, they learn math, they learn a lot of different things that way. And we're actually writing grants and looking for sponsors so that we can help them create products from their gardens, like salsas or sauces or just salad mixes, things like that, so we can give them job skills.
Now, we'll run on the TV screen websites and telephone numbers and things, so we hope our viewers will chime in and get involved.
Absolutely.
When I was about 16 or 17, a friend of my grandfather, who was probably 70 at the time, said to me, "You'll never be happier than when your hands are in the soil."
Oh, that's brilliant.
It really is. And,
Yeah.
and as we've had gardens and the flowers and the roses and all these things. And you can just get out there and be in another world.
Well,
for good.
That's something else that without my wife, I wouldn't be doing this. I mean, first of all, the garden and the chicken, we've got some chickens as well, and, helping out there sometimes. I wouldn't say regularly, but at least it gets me out there. But her cooking, on top of being a rabbi, what she loves to do is feed the family. And she did something with beets and walnuts, and I don't remember, she can't even remember what it was, but it was so delicious, and I said, everybody ought to be able to eat like this, right? That should be a human right. Every child should go to bed well fed, and that's really the goal of this, is that to organize the community in such a way that there are enough resources to take care of all of our kids, because they're not getting taken care of.
And are you feeling some success?
I'm definitely feeling some success. The sad part is we have a fresh snack in the after-school program at this one school, 100% free and reduced lunches in Oak Park. And the kids there are saying, this is the first food I've had all day. And that's just tragic. So what we're doing is creating a sponsorship program where for $5 a week, you can basically cover one child. And we'll put part of that money, $2 of those dollars, toward fresh food. And we actually are about to give $2,000 to the food services for Sac City Unified to kick off the program, and $2,000 to the PE department, because we need to restore athletics and the arts to these kids as well. Those are the indicators of fitness and well-being, and they're just not being met with the budget cuts. So we're asking the private sector to do what we're supposed to be doing and taking care of these kids.
Well, way to go. Way to go.
So I'm really just blessed that I got led to this somehow. Just everything fell into place, and it's really starting to take root.
How did you find your way to Sacramento?
My wife's a native Sacramento.
Yeah.
So she grew up here. Her mom was actually first violinist in the symphony for many, many years. And her dad had a career girl dress store downtown before all the chain stores kicked, the little mom and pop stores out of existence. And we were looking for a place to serve together. We wanted to have one congregation to raise the kids in. We were in different places back in the East, and it just felt fragmented. So we were applying to different places, and lo and behold, there was an opening at this congregation here. And Carrie Cohen, who just celebrated her 90th birthday, was her kindergarten Hebrew school teacher. And then was in this congregation, and they were willing to take the leap, and they actually waited an extra year for us because we were having a kid and we weren't ready to move at that point. And so Lily came along, and they just waited, and we moved here when she was just 1 year old, and she'll be almost 10.
I wish I could remember the name of the woman one night when we attended.
I'll bet it was Carrie.
I think it might have been.
Yeah.
And she led me through every page and every line. And she was a thrill.
She is our teacher. She got out of Berlin right in 1939, right before, and ended up in Palestine and worked the land. And she's got pictures of everything that she was doing. And then she ended up over here, and she's our teacher. She is the Jewish community's teacher.
Well, she led us through, and she was so delightful. And when it was time afterward to go in and have a snack, she announced which was good, better, and best, and why, where, and who, and we sampled a variety of things and found her to be right on every time. And
what you have to do is come to the food festival in the fall when she makes her cabbage rolls, and you got to order those ahead of time because those sell out.
We better try to do that.
Absolutely.
Are your children aware of their Jewish background, traditions? Are they attached to being Jewish?
They are. And they're all thinkers. We don't say just take it or leave it. We really say think about it. And so our eldest actually contributes regularly to the Holocaust Museum, and he really cares about oppression. And there are a lot of younger Jews who don't realize how much their Jewish background has led them to that kind of interest. I think he's pretty well aware of it. He's not that interested in sitting down and praying. I can't say that any of them are yet in that place, but I don't think prayer is necessarily always for younger people. I think more activity is for them. But they're all having their bar bat mitzvahs, and they're involved in the community and in their congregations.
Growing up, we heard all about the Holocaust. We were Jesus was a Jew, and so that made it important to us. Mm-hmm. My father and mother were adamant about that. Mm-hmm. And we followed the house of Judah routinely. But not until we went to Dachau, my wife and I, some years ago, mm-hmm. and we'd been over visiting the Olympic Village sort of across the road. I mean, it's just a mile or two away there in Munich, right. And on the way down, there was a big BMW factory and, a whole bunch of other, just the modern world of Germany. And then we pulled into the parking lot and walk up the gravel path and
Right.
now start the big photographs and all the other things. And the sense of walking in there and the spirit of what unfolded and all of those other things took me from just sort of a history book learning to what really, really unfolded.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a sign there that says never again in about 7 or 8 languages.
Yep.
And it's a pretty monument sort of thing. And I immediately wanted my picture taken by that
Mm-hmm.
because it felt that way. And after you've toured the barracks and watched the gun postings and the DMZs between fence lines and barbed wire and trenches and all that other stuff, it just overpowered me. It just overpowered me.
We were in Prague for our honeymoon, and we stepped into the Jewish quarter, and my wife just started weeping, just started sobbing. You just don't know what spirits live on, right? And
Great
we're
old Jewish
connecting with-
cemetery in Prague.
That's right. I'll say something that I've thought about. I haven't really said, and we'll see how it lands. But I tend to think that the Jewish people have turned as a people into the Jesus of peoples. That is, we've suffered for other people's failings, right? So when a leader in Europe in the Middle Ages, the economy wasn't doing well, they had a really convenient explanation. It was the Jews. No matter how much Jews contributed to the society, had helped grease the wheels of the economy actually, everybody thinks that we're just in it for the money, but we got really smart about money because we couldn't own land in the Middle Ages. We were absolutely prohibited from farming. And so, and because we had Yiddish as a common language and handshake deals, we could actually be the ones who were trading across the borders in medieval Europe. And unfortunately, with Shakespeare and Shylock and all of that, and we've gotten pegged as just trying to take everybody else's money, when in fact, there's always some rotten apples, in a barrel, but the vast majority of Jews are as generous as you could possibly imagine, are contributors to a wide range of things, and have really tried to start a lot of different things. Because we understand that we were told to be a blessing to all the families of the earth. That's what Abraham's mission was, and that's what generations of Jews have taught. And it's the only reason we're still here is because we've got a mission to be here for. And the vast, vast, vast majority of us really understand that. But unfortunately, due to the way that the Gospels turned out, when the Romans couldn't be blamed. You can't blame the real problem, and now at least, Italians, they don't identify with Romans, so you're not blaming anybody who's currently alive for this, but we've carried that on our backs.
Well, what you said landed well.
Okay.
That landed well. Sean and I were in Argentina a couple of months ago, and I can't remember the name of the town, but we were introduced to some gauchos. Mm-hmm. And the one man, as we talked in broken English, said he was Jewish. So I started rattling off my Jewish friends and what we're doing and da-da-da-da-da. And he said, "Do you know Yiddish?" And I said, "No, not even hardly a word." He said, "Well, amongst the cowboy population, the Jewish gauchos, we only speak Yiddish."
Wow.
In Argentina.
That's great.
And I just
great.
thought that was really, really cool that they were doing that.
That's fantastic.
And that little moment in time that lasted 30 seconds then went on to other things, and away we went. But I laid in bed that night and thought, I've always thought about the Argentine gauchos, but I've never thought about them speaking Yiddish.
Never in a million years. You know the difference between a schlemiel and a schlemazel?
I do not.
The schlemiel spills the soup on the schlemazel. It's a little Yiddish lesson. Okay. That's the quickest Yiddish lesson I can give you.
Very good. Now, where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
Oh my goodness.
5 years from now?
On the golf course.
Good for you.
More.
And I'll be there with you.
More on the golf course. No, I think that we're really hoping to create this model of community economic empowerment in a way that it could be replicated anywhere. So that's really my hope, is to to have helped to invent, with a whole lot of other people, kind of a different way actually of doing money, that really supports the young people in the community, and it provides jobs and a more equitable understanding of money. My senior sermon in rabbinical school was scheduled for November 9th, 1984, a week after Ronald Reagan was sure to be reelected. And I grew up in a Republican household, and my sermon was on, if you're going to advocate for the free market, then you've got to make sure that that market is organized in a way that creates access for lower income folks and for people who don't have access to resources to produce. And lo and behold, that kind of wormed its way into my unconscious and has reemerged, almost 3 decades later. And that's what I would hope, is that there's a bipartisan way for all of us to both use public and private initiative together to really take care of everybody. And that's the only thing that's worth doing, I think.
Well said.
Well, other than raising your kids and playing golf.
Right. Now, if you can wave the magic wand in life and fix something or do away with something or whatever, what would it be?
Well, I think that would pretty much be it. But maybe my duck hooks on the golf course too.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Rabbi David, nice to visit with you.
Always a pleasure, John.
Thanks so much. Take care.
You bet.